For Your Misinformation is part of the Demcast family of podcasts. What's up, everybody? I'm Katie.
And I'm Morgan.
And this is For Your Misinformation, a podcast dedicated to empowering women to be more politically engaged so we can act in our own best interests.
Let us break down the problem and tell you what we're doing and what you can do to help solve it.
Hi, Rachel.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. So we have a guest with us who is a teacher from Colorado who is very involved with local politics. So we have some questions for her. But before we get started, I ask everybody who joins us if they remember how we met, which is kind of a trick question because we've never met in person. But like, do you have a recollection of the first time we met?
I mean, I have a recollection of why we know each other.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, my husband and Katie's boyfriend were friends in high school, and so we are now friends through that.
Yes, that's right. I have a special place in my heart for Rachel and her husband because really the only reason Clark and I started talking again is because my name came up at your husband's bachelor party because a lot of them went to the high school with me. And so Clark messaged me on Instagram. So just so everybody knows, Instagram DMs work in case you're wondering. But so you guys have like a special place in my heart because you're kind of the only reason that we started talking again after like 10 years.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And I remember him being like, just go for it, dude. Just go for it. Like, she seems great. Just go for it.
Yay.
Aww.
So, I mean, so far so good. But yeah. So I'm really glad that you agreed to talk to us because I saw that you posted the other day on Instagram that you had just made 60 campaign calls in an hour, and it just like looked really nice. Like it looked like you were just like hanging out in your backyard, like talking on the phone. I don't know. It seemed rewarding. Like who were you volunteering for?
Yeah, so I was volunteering for Charles Booker's campaign, who is one of the Democratic candidates. Well, not anymore, but
right.
Amy McGrath is now. But he was running against Amy McGrath in Kentucky against Mitch McConnell, which is really the most important part there. So, yeah, he was just trying to get Mitch McConnell out of Senate. So, yeah, I was making calls for him, even though I'm in Colorado.
Okay. So Morgan and I really care about politics, but we are also very socially anxious, and we have questions about campaign calls in general, and I bet a handful of our listeners are in the same boat. So, like, how'd you decide on Charles Booker? What made you pick him?
An Instagram ad, actually.
Nice. Okay, that's
yeah. Nice. So it's if you start even just like searching for different candidates, even if it's in your state or nationally, whatever, because of Instagram being creepy, they will start giving you advertisements. And as bad as it sounds, it's pretty easy to find candidates that way. So I actually found Charles Booker through that because the advertisement was something about kicking Mitch McConnell out of Senate. And I was like, hell yes, I am on board. Nice. So yeah, you can find it that way. Otherwise, I mean, I found candidates in the past just by searching who was up for different seats in my state. Yeah, there's lots of ways you can find candidates.
So what do you remember the first time that you made phone calls for a campaign? Do you remember like what that was like? Were you nervous?
I do. This is kind of funny. So my first campaign that I worked for was Obama in 2008.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, and I was 17 years old, so I wasn't even technically old enough to vote, but I had a big crush on the campaign manager. So I was like, I'm going to work here every day. And I remember being so nervous, but I also remember being like, don't show it because you don't want him to think you're a big baby, which actually helped because that facade made me feel braver than I was. And then once I like just dove headfirst into it, I realized it wasn't bad at all. So it was helpful that
Good.
I was in that situation, to make me realize that it's not that bad at all.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Sounds like you kind of were like, take a fake it till you make it approach.
It was very much a fake it till you make it approach. Definitely a fake it till you make it approach. But really, I only had to fake it for like one call and then realized that it's fine. Because what a lot of people don't realize is who you're calling, they're either moderates who lean to whoever you're calling for, or they're already people who are registered Democrat or Republican. So chances are, if you're calling for a Democratic candidate, the people are going to be responsive. I don't know. I think since 2008, and I've worked on a lot of different campaigns, I think I've only been yelled at like less than 5 times.
Oh
Like
my
I've
gosh,
had like
that's so
negative
nice to hear.
reactions. Yeah, it's definitely not as bad as people make it. Like not make it out to be, but like you think it'll be.
Yeah.
Because everybody gets annoyed with campaign calls and whatever, so you think people are gonna get mad, but no, not really.
Once again, I have just created a worst case scenario in my brain that is
totally
not real. Okay,
no,
cool.
I get it. And I mean, the worst thing that really happens most of the time is they just hang up on you, which is
I can take that.
It's not like the best, but it's like, oh wait, I'm talking to nobody. Okay, next, and
Yeah.
then you just move on, and it's fine.
Yeah, it's like, I guess, like I do that to people sometimes when I'm just like, I don't have time for this right now.
Right, me too. Totally.
It's not because I hate them. So yeah, that's comforting.
Yeah, it's like a positive like presupposition. Like you have to remember that like the people you're calling, who knows, maybe they're like at the doctor's office or they're like trying to take care of their infant. Like you don't know what's going on. So they might just hang up because they don't have time, and that's fine.
So is there training that you had or that you have had for any like phone banking and phone calls? Is there an app? Like what does somebody need to get?
Yeah,
or have to be able to do
a
this?
lot of communication that goes on with campaigns now is through Slack. Do you guys know what that is?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I've never used it though.
Yeah,
it's super easy. You just get the app, and then you just like get the app, and then you type in whatever the code is for the campaign, and then from there it's just kind of like a feed of what's going on. And so you have like the campaign leads, and so you can ask them direct questions. So that's like how you continually communicate as you're making the call. So if something happens and you are like, I have absolutely no idea what to do in this situation, you can just move over to your Slack tab or your Slack app and then ask the question, and they take care of it.
Oh, nice.
With
so
you. So it's like you're really not on your own at all, because they set up campaign times. They don't necessarily want you just calling. So you sign up for a slot between like 2 and 4, 4 and 6. And that way there's always that campaign lead who is on Slack for questions.
Gotcha.
And then you're not calling people at midnight and making people upset with the campaign. So you are supported the whole time. And then as far as training goes, like there is the option for training. I haven't done it in a long time, but if you need it, when you sign up to volunteer, they offer it all the time. So it's usually through a Zoom call or like a Google Meet, but you can have just like a face-to-face interaction with whoever the lead is for that canvassing time.
Gotcha.
Have you noticed that some campaigns have like more organization or more training or kind of better put together than others that you volunteered with?
Yeah, definitely the more that's what I'm looking for, monetarily funded one.
Okay.
Yeah, so like Charles Booker, he was getting a ton of donations. So his was really organized and great. Obama's was amazing. I worked for Beto O'Rourke when he was a candidate.
Running against Ted Cruz.
Way back when?
Well, no, it was actually during the presidential campaign.
Oh.
I really like Beto.
I really like him too.
Yeah. But because it was presidential and there was 20 Democratic candidates, he wasn't getting as much money, and so it was kind of less organized.
Patchwork.
So really it really has a lot to do with how much money is being made, because then that's who gets paid to run the campaign.
Yeah, that's so good to know. And like, that's like affirming too of what we've been telling everybody about the importance of like early money, especially because that's how they get people going off the ground right away.
Yep,
So
totally.
yeah, that's great.
And that's where like that grassroots organization comes from, because like before they're a big name, you have to donate. Otherwise, like,
they never
those
get
initial campaign calls aren't going to happen. Yeah, exactly.
You said something that reminded me of something else, but now I can't remember what it was. Oh. A great audio story.
It'll come.
What were we?
We were talking
about Beto.
About Charles Booker, Obama.
I was at Beto's. I live in Des Moines, Iowa, and I was at Beto's speech that he was like, "Hey, I'm not running for president anymore." Like da da da. It was like, because it was the week of the Iowa caucuses, and it was like across the street basically from where I live. I walked over there with my dogs and watched it. And I was like crying. Like I was just like, why am I having so many feelings about this? It was so weird. Like I didn't like dislike him. Like I was like, I like him fine. He wasn't my number one candidate, but like watching him like speak, I was like, oh, I'm so sorry, Beto. We let you down. I was like, what is happening right now? I just wanted to go give him a hug.
Didn't he drop out because there was like a mass shooting in Texas? Like, isn't that the order of events kind of? Or maybe not because, but I think like right after he dropped out, there was like a mass shooting in Texas because he was no longer running for president, and he said like fuck to a newspaper.
He said, members of the press, what the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I know he took like a really strong stance towards the end about like gun control.
Yeah, because I think that shooting in El Paso happened like right before.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah,
that would make sense.
And and
I was just thinking like,
nope, we're taking your guns. I don't even care anymore.
Right. Yeah, he was like so over it. Which I'm not
I think that's probably why you were like extra sad, because like he was just like a good dude, and like all of that was going on.
It was so passionate, and I brought my dogs, and they were like listening to him. I kid you not, they were into it.
I remembered what I was gonna say, just that if you you only really have to get yourself connected in with one like grassroots group like Indivisible or DSA, Democratic Socialists, or I'm sure there's even more, but both of those have numerous trainings, phone bank trainings. And so if you can do that, or if you want to, the other one that we recommend a lot is Adopt a State, which is through Crooked Media. So last week they send out one email a week that has volunteer opportunities in it. So it doesn't like flood your inbox. It's a list of opportunities for that week. You can either do them or you can't, whatever. If you can't, then like you get the one the next week and you see what you can do. But this week was the first week of phone banking. So cool. I like promised myself that after we do this, I'm going to like psych myself up to do phone banking next week through Adopt a State.
If you want to do it together, I'm more than happy to. Like we can set up a Zoom call and side by side do it. Like that's an option too. So
yeah, thanks.
You definitely don't have to do it together. Or like texting your friends too to be like, I'm scared, but I'm gonna do it. Like,
yeah.
In those group texts.
I have plenty of very supportive friends. Okay, so if I were to make like 10 calls, like what would I get? Like 3 answers and like 10 ignores? Like what does your phone call experience look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think that sounds right. I would say probably about a third actually answer, but you're not actually making the phone calls yourself. It's through an automated system.
Oh.
So and I can't remember the name of it for the life of me that I used on Charles Booker's campaign, but I know it's different for different campaigns. But it's through a website, and then you put your phone number into the website, and then it ends up calling people. You talk on your phone, but from their end, it looks like a 1-800 number, so they don't know your phone number at all.
Gotcha.
And then you just read the script. So it automatically, if they hang up on you, it'll just call the next number automatically. If they hang up, it'll call automatic. And so I would say probably like 1/3, maybe a little more than that, actually answer and have a conversation with you.
Mm-hmm.
the rest either go to voicemail or hang up.
Do you leave voicemails?
No.
Okay. Just curious.
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like if I left a voicemail, I would freeze up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so true. God, I'm
Like,
so
who's this
awkward on
crazy lady
voicemails.
on the phone?
I am so awkward on voicemails. Oh my God. Oh, cringe. So someone like us who, I mean, we're feeling maybe a little bit better about this already, but who, like, what would you say to somebody who's like, yes, I really want to volunteer. I want to make calls, but I'm kind of scared. Like, what would you say? Or like, what would your advice be? Or like, should we practice? Like a nice call and a mean call.
I mean, I would just say that it's completely scripted. And so like it like if somebody is upset with you, there's like a whole line of communication on how to handle that. If somebody is having a great time talking to you, there's a whole line of communication. So it's scripted and they've pretty much planned for everything. Also, if somebody is like upset with you, nobody's telling you have to stay on the phone with them. You're absolutely allowed to just hang up if they're upset. But for the most part, like I said, like since I've started doing this, that's barely ever happened. And people are just interested. And the other thing too, if you don't feel like that you are as knowledgeable about the candidate as you would hope to be or would want to be, so maybe your fear lies in like, if somebody asks a question, I don't know how I would answer it. Campaigns give you like a fast fact page. So if somebody has a question, you just toggle over to that tab and say, okay, just give me 1 second, let me check on that, and then find the answer and then give it to them.
Seems like they've thought of everything.
It's really so easy, you guys, I promise. Like, it's so easy. And it's fun too because it gets people like amped up to vote, because like with Charles Booker's, I was calling the day before the actual election, and like you guys saw what happened in Kentucky where they were like locking people out, and it was horrible. And his campaign was offering rides, so part of the questions were, oh great, you're voting for either Amy McGrath or Charles Booker, we literally don't care, somebody to get Mitch McConnell out of office. And at that point they were like, do you need a ride? We can give you a ride. So part of the conversation too was like setting that person up with a ride. So it's so much more than just campaigning per se. There's way more community outreach involved.
That's a really good point. Marie Newman won our Democratic primary, so she's not like until she wins in November, which like I don't even know if there is a Republican running, but like until she wins in November, I guess she's not technically our congressperson. But they have like a whole mutual aid outreach. Like she's not even trying to get elected anymore. There's no need for that. But like her entire campaign is still making calls to members of the community just to make sure that they have all the stuff that they need for coronavirus. So there's a lot of grassroots campaigns, especially, are much more than just political. There's a lot of like community components for sure. Do you remember like your best campaign volunteering experience? Like your happiest moment or most rewarding moment?
That was a really good question.
Oh, thanks. It was Morgan's question. I stole it.
Morgan, that was such a good question. I have to think about that. I do remember when Obama was elected in 2008, we were doing like a get out the vote where we were just driving around picking people up and taking them to polling places. And it was truly like, we don't care who you're voting for, just vote, with the idea that most of the people we were picking up were voting for Obama. But it was so powerful. Like people, like when he got elected that night, we were in a Denny's
Nice.
because we were starving afterward, and just people like so excited and like crying and happy, and it was amazing. And everybody was like, it was just so cool knowing that was like months and months and months and months of work paid off, and all those conversations we had and all the canvassing that we did going door to door and all of it. I don't know. And sometimes it doesn't pay off, like when Trump got elected in 2016, but those, I don't know, it just that really strong communal feeling of like, oh my God, we did this together. And it really takes every single person doing something to make it happen. And so like when it does happen, it's this really powerful feeling.
Yeah.
So Denny's in 2008.
I love that. That's so awesome.
We talk a lot about how there's no wasted movements. So like even though Charles Booker didn't beat Amy McGrath this time around, like there are still a lot more progressive Democrats in Kentucky because Charles Booker ran then.
Absolutely.
So
and there's so many more people interested in getting McConnell out of office because Charles Booker got their attention and they were like, well, okay, he didn't make it, but Amy McGrath can still get Mitch McConnell out, which is really the sole purpose here.
Right. Yes. And we'll also talk a little bit about Cory Gardner at the end because we need him to get out to, even if we don't, we need to flip the Senate, whether Amy McGrath beats Mitch McConnell or not. We need to like take that House majority seat out of the Republicans' hands. And Cory Gardner is one of the ways that we got to do it.
Well, and that was the point I wanted to speak on, was that if people are interested in campaigning and making campaign calls, that if their state is a state that, like, for instance, like Debbie Stabenow in Michigan, she's been in Senate since I was like 6, like forever. Like if you live in a state that your senator has a chance, like they're probably going to get reelected, putting your time and effort into those states like North Carolina, Maine, even South Carolina kind of has some backing behind it right now, which is surprising me. And
is that because of Lindsey Graham and Jamie Harrison? Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. But like Colorado, Arizona, Maine, Montana, North Carolina, Kentucky, like all those places, like put your time and effort into making calls for them, because those are the ones that really are going to flip Senate, which would be amazing if that happens.
We need it, like,
right.
Otherwise there's no checks. I mean,
checks and balances. Yeah.
I miss
then it's
them.
just a bunch of right. Yeah. I miss people keeping each other in check.
I know, I took it
just
for
getting
granted.
what you want.
Is there an extra need now for volunteers and campaign callers, since like door knocking is obviously not an option?
Yeah, I would definitely say so.
Yeah.
Definitely say so.
And then like what about like texts, like campaign texting? Are those proving to be effective? I feel like that's been kind of like a new thing that's taken off this year. I know I've gotten a ton of texts in the last several months.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak on whether or not it's been effective. I don't know the data behind it, but I mean, it's kind of the same idea, I think, as putting up a yard sign, like your exposure at least to different candidates. I mean, like that's kind of the point of putting up a sign in your yard, you know. If somebody doesn't know the candidates, at least now they know the name, and so when they see a ballot, there's maybe a little bit better of a chance of them actually picking that.
Yeah.
We would prefer them being informed voters, but you know. But yeah, I definitely can't speak on whether or not, like, statistically there's a difference. But that's a great question.
I'm curious.
I would look that up. Yeah.
It's definitely gotten me more interested, because a lot of the texts I'm getting are like, can you attend this live event tonight on Zoom? Or we really need more campaign callers. I'm like, I guess I could do that. Like I could make some phone calls, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's at least helpful in getting me thinking about that.
Yeah. And it gives you like the resources, like knowing where to start. Like if somebody, instead of like knowing you want to make calls, but then not even knowing where to go from there, if you've got this text that says, do you want to make calls? Then you can start there and move forward.
Yeah.
Gives you like a starting point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. That's a good point, Morgan.
It's kind of just, it's giving people an opportunity to like act on hopefully a shared value. So I don't know.
Yeah, I like that.
I remember a while ago you told me about 5Calls and that app.
Yes, I love 5 calls.
Do you still use that?
Yeah, I use 5 calls.
Do you want to talk a little bit about like what it is?
Yeah, so 5 calls is an app that you can get, and I'm actually going to open it up so I can like actually walk you guys through it. But So it's an app that you get, and you just type in where you live, and it'll automatically populate who your local representatives are, your state and your federal representatives, Senate and reps, I guess I should say. And then it gives just like a list of current bills in office that you feel passionately about. So for instance, let's see, like one is support the Confederate Monument Removal Act. So I'm going to click on that, and it tells some background, and then it tells how your representatives are currently feeling about it. So like Cory Gardner doesn't care at all about this kind of thing, whereas Michael Bennet does. And so I could make the choice to then call Cory Gardner. So I'd click on his name, it gives his phone number, and then it gives a script of exactly what to say. And then you just call and you follow the script and you hang up, and that's that. And so it just makes it really, really accessible to know about different legislature that's like being pushed through at the moment.
Yeah.
And then allows you to have a voice without, like, for me, leaving voicemails is freaky. Like I can talk on the phone, but like leaving voicemails, I just sound stupid all the time. So having that script and knowing exactly what to say instead of just having to like fly by the seat of my pants and make it up is helpful. So yeah, 5 calls is amazing, and you can use that outside of campaign season too, just all the time.
Yeah,
Always,
it seems like
forever.
it's issue based.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I think I used something very similar to it for making some phone calls for like police brutality. So calling, I know like one of the voicemails I left was at the Attorney General at Bill Barr's office. Like I was just like, hi, so you really need to arrest these people who murdered this black man. And yeah, like I used something like that. And yeah, for issues like, it's so great. I love technology, really is good for something.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree.
Love it.
I want to point, so I was talking to somebody, I mean, this was before I started the podcast, so it was probably even in like 2019. I was talking to somebody and I said something about how like they should call their senator, and they kind of like laughed, and I was like, no, like what? That's not a joke. Like they were like, oh, I always thought when people said that they were like kidding, and I'm like, no, you should call your senator. Like they should know how you feel and how you think they should feel. So obviously this podcast is not like crooked media level. Like we're not like hauling in numbers like Pod Save America is. But one of their calls to action one week was to call their congressperson, and they had like, you could go through their website to do it. And I think they only got like 3,000 people to participate. And that was like, I felt like real bad about that. Cause I was like, oh no, this is like these are probably the most like politically engaged people. Like if they're bothering to listen to a podcast about politics, like they're probably pretty politically engaged, but only like 3,000 of them will bother to actually contact their elected official. Like, so that kind of sucks, but also it means like if you're bothering to contact your local official, they're probably going to listen, because not that many people like actually bother to reach out to their elected officials, but they should be held accountable to you. They work for you.
Absolutely. And I think what people don't realize too is that, especially on those big issues like police brutality, when there's things go viral and then they get flooded, it's truly like they're taking a tally of who believes what thing and where their constituents stand. And so even if you just call and spend 15 seconds to say your side, if you can like fill that tally, it makes a difference. And yeah, you don't have to like give a speech, I think, is what people most importantly need to realize. Like you can just quickly share your opinion, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And same with campaign calls. You just follow the script, and that's it.
Nice. Can we shift into talking about schools and stuff?
We can.
So you're an elementary school teacher, is that right?
Yes.
So what grade do you teach?
I teach upper elementary.
Gotcha. So what's happening? What's going on with schools? We're recording this on July 16th. So
that's a great question. I wish I had a more straightforward answer for you, but I think that it's changing constantly, and decisions are being made preemptively, like before they need to be.
Mhm.
And I understand that, there's a lot riding on it. Parents need to know what's going on. Absolutely. Especially as they're being called back to work. Teachers need to know what's going on. But so far, like in my district, we have been given 3 different restart plans at this point.
Oh, wow.
They just keep changing. Yeah, Morgan, I make that face too. And it's really hard. And I think the hardest part for me is back in June. My district gave us a 43-page document and asked us to give feedback on every single page because that was the original restart plan. So almost every teacher I know did it because we wanted to be heard. And nothing changed. Not a single thing changed. So it's like we were asked to do all of this work, which is fine. That's kind of what we're used to. We do a lot of work with not a lot in return, but
right.
Our hope was that we were going to be respected as professionals, especially as the people who are in the building all the time. And we were completely ignored, which was hard. And we were told several times that the plan was going to come out at a certain date and it would come out weeks prior. So like our union wouldn't have a chance to review or give feedback or anything like that. So it's been a lot of, I think, pressure from the federal government, especially when it comes to withholding aid and funding. And then the state government has pressure, and then the district has pressure. And then because of all that pressure, decisions are being made without actually being thought through.
Yeah.
And I think that it's going to really hurt the kids in the long run because, it sucks not going back right away. I get that. Like every teacher wants to go back. Every single one. But what's going to hurt kids more is going back and then going back to remote for a month and then going back to school and going back remote because they can't build routines that way.
Yeah.
They can't have structure that way, and kids thrive off of structure and predictability.
I love structure. Everybody loves structure.
Exactly. And so I just think that a lot of people who are making these decisions don't actually have a whole lot of experience in child development or child welfare.
Yeah.
And they're not listening to the people who do, and that's really hard.
Katie and I, as public health professionals, say the same thing a lot right now. Is we're like, why are the public health people not making the decisions here? Hold on. You're listening to the wrong voices. Yeah,
exactly.
You're
it's the exact same
all the
thing.
Wrong shit.
Yep.
Kind of on that note, like, what do you wish more people, and like, if Betsy DeVos counts as people is questionable, but anyway, like, what do you wish more people knew about public schools in America, both like right now and just in general?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. I think like one thing that I think people don't understand about public schools is how research and science-based all of our decisions are. We aren't just, it's not like it used to be where you put up pretty posters and, play with popsicle sticks, like what you imagine from when we were kids. Everything that educators do now is research-based. We are constantly growing as professionals to better serve kids and better meet the needs of all students in all classes and races and neighborhoods, and really truly trying to meet the needs of all kids. And so I think that it's still like a misunderstanding that teachers go in and do arts and crafts all day. And we don't. It's really, really research based, and I don't know, it's just a lot of work to make sure kids are successful, and it's always very student centered, specifically in public schools. I can't speak to private because I don't teach in a private school, but I do know from my experience in public that's how it goes.
Gotcha. Is there anything else about schools opening that you wanted to share? I didn't have any other questions written down, but I'm sure you have lots of thoughts about it.
I mean, not too much. I mean, I'm pretty long-winded about this because it kind of like my world.
Yeah.
But I think people just need to keep remembering, like, there's so much more to kids going back right now, like, than being educated. Like, we're really worrying about their mental health. We're worrying about whether or not they're being fed. We're worrying about all these different parts and pieces. But then we're also worrying about like their physical health and COVID and the health of educators and the health of the adults in the building and the grandparents of kids and the grandparents of teachers, you know, all those different parts and pieces that people, there's so many layers, and I think the layers are being ignored.
Yeah.
Or not necessarily ignored. People are aware the layers are there, but then instead of making like a state or federal protocol around it, it's, why don't you figure it out, district? See how it goes. Like it's
yeah, and then you have people with like MBAs making decisions about like public health, and it's like, well, that guy knows about like, I don't know, revenue charts. Like, well,
right.
Yeah. It's not ideal. But essentially, okay, so from like a purely public health standpoint, like my overview of what happened in America is basically we shut down for not nearly long enough that if we wanted things to reopen like normal, like we're pretending like we're about to now, like it's too late. Like we're living in like this fantasy world now where we're moving forward. Like we got cases down to a low enough number that opening back up wasn't crazy, but that's just not true. So like we have to move forward understanding that that's the case. Like we already fucked up beyond repair essentially, and like now we have to make decisions, like updated decisions knowing that. And like if we wanted the kids to be in school and to have food, then like, which we should, like we should have been prioritizing that in like March and April.
Right, and it's only going to get worse if we send kids back, and then in the long run they won't have those needs met anyway. So keeping them, like my thought process is, if we kept them home in March, why are we not keeping them home now?
Yeah, that I can't wrap my head around that either, because in almost every state except for maybe like New York and New Jersey, there's more positive cases now than there were in March. So what are you, like, you think because some people wear masks now, or like what? Like what's the difference?
Exactly. And it'll be a real treat trying to keep a mask on a 6-year-old.
But yeah, my sister teaches kindergarten, and she's planning on spending the rest of her summer, like her plan right now, because she doesn't know what else to do, because they're not going to require masks or anything, and they're going to be in school for Iowa. 8 hours, 5 days a week. So she's going to get a bunch of like clear plastic shower curtains and like try to figure out how to hang them from the ceiling. God. She doesn't know what else to do. She's like, I don't know. How do I keep them from, she's like, they breathe on each other. They breathe all over and cough all over themselves. She's like, I don't know what else to do. She's like, so I'm going to have to, yeah. So she's just like, I don't know. She's like,
oh my God, bless her for trying.
Oh my gosh, seriously. So well, and like, here's my other thought too, is that if and just say like, hey, we need you to be babysitters, period. That's truly what we're being asked to do right now. And if that's the case, that's the case. But then don't hold us to the same standards you would any other year, because any other year for my kids to be successful, I need to have small groups. I need to have like a setting where they're not 6 feet apart. I need to have them moving classrooms so they can get the instruction that they need. All these components are part of what makes student growth. And so if you're going to take it away, don't expect the same growth as you would any other year. And so the argument being, well, we need like an equitable education for our kids. We need them to be going back and like growing and staying in school. Okay, well, that's not going to happen. Like, you can't teach kids and expect them to grow in the same way they would any other year when you've got shower curtains separating them. Like, that's just not going to work. And so if people would just come out and say, like, hey, we need you to babysit so we can get our economy up and running.
Right.
Like, even that would make me feel a little bit better, because then you're not like insulting my like expertise.
Yeah. Yep. That's what she said. She said she's like, I'm being treated like a babysitter. Although unfortunately, if I quit my job and just babysat, I would probably make more money. Like, she's like, if I quit my job and just babysat the kids whose parents are working and their school district decided not to open, I'd probably make more money, you know, and the school can't even fund tissue boxes for the classroom. She's like, there's no way we're not going to run out of hand sanitizer and Lysol wipes within a month.
100%. Well, and this might be something that your editor would need to edit out.
All right.
But I am actually not going back to school in the fall because my husband is immunocompromised. He has a heart condition and respiratory issues, and that's not something that I'm willing to expose him to.
Right.
And I am nannying for a family that is like very COVID conscious.
Oh, good.
And for 30 hours a week, mind you, I usually work 55 to 60. 30 hours a week, I will be making only $400 less a month.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, so to really, like your sister was saying, like, she's not wrong. Like, it's insane.
Are you, have you told the school that you're not coming back yet?
I have.
There's two women in my Indivisible group who are teachers who just said the same thing. They just told, I mean, like, they're not going to send their kids to school, so they can't go be teachers. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and I think at this point, there's got to be power in numbers. Like, we're all just so sick of being shit on all the time.
Yeah.
That
Understandably.
I think that, thank you, that if we have the ability, and thankfully my husband has a job that we can, and we're lucky for that, but if we have the ability, they're only going to continue treating us this way until we stop dealing with it. And so since I'm capable and have the support at home, I'm not going to deal with it anymore. Like, I just feel like there's power in numbers that way.
Yeah, for sure. Good.
Yeah.
All right. I took down some specific notes about Colorado. Do you mind if we just kind of go over them briefly for anybody else who might be listening from Colorado, and then we can talk some shit about Cory Gardner?
Yes.
Okay. The primary objectives in Colorado are to flip the U.S. Senate seat that's currently held by Cory Gardner. Now we know that he will be running against John Hickenlooper, right?
Yep.
Officially.
That's right.
And then also to win Colorado's 9 electoral votes and hopefully have those go towards Joe Biden instead of towards Trump. So you already live in a divided government because who's your governor?
Jared Polis.
Is he good or bad?
I like him. He's Democratic. Okay. He's the first openly gay governor, which I think is pretty sweet.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he just passed. Oh gosh, I can't remember what the bill is called, but it's essentially the law that if you're scared of somebody being gay and you assault them, then it's okay. Essentially,
panic.
Yes, that's it. Yeah. I can't remember what it's called, but
yeah,
he just passed a law saying like that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Good.
No.
Good. Yeah. There's only like 3 states now that have that law. Where it's like,
yeah, exactly. And so he just did that, and he jumped right on when it came to defunding police. And yeah, I wish he was more supportive of education, but that's okay. I mean, we'll get there.
Yeah.
He's really supportive of other important things.
Good. So we need 4 Senate seats to kick Mitch McConnell out of the majority leader position. And the pathway to do that probably runs through Colorado. Cory Gardner is pretty unpopular, so yay. But yeah, so to flip the seat, Democrats need to improve on the margins from the last Senate election in 2014 in 3 key urban communities, specifically Pueblo, Fort Collins, and Denver are, I guess, where like most of the change opportunities are.
That makes sense.
So yeah, so we're hoping for high voter turnout, and with high voter turnout, then things should hopefully go well in Colorado. I did some research about like issues that specific to Colorado. So gun violence in Colorado, you guys get a C from the Giffords Law Center for State Gun Laws. In 2017, Colorado was in the top half of states for gun death in the country. Someone is killed with a gun every 12 hours in Colorado.
Wow, I did not know that statistic. It doesn't necessarily surprise me, but
I know there's more scary ones even. Like, I was surprised to read this stuff and then be like, wait, this state gets a C? Like, this is a C, not an F? Like, so Colorado doesn't require gun owners to hold a license, doesn't require them to register their firearms or report lost or stolen firearms. There's no waiting period for gun purchases, and it doesn't require firearm dealers to have licenses to sell guns either. So, like, that seems really bad, but apparently in America that's only a C. I don't know. But the only way
All
to
I
deal
know
with...
is there are billboards all over our highways advertising gun shows all the time. So
Nice. I didn't
that
realize
gives you any sign.
I didn't realize that Colorado was such a big gun state.
Yeah. Yeah, and you'd think for having like Columbine and
Right. Yeah.
the Aurora shooting and
Yeah.
you know, Littleton High School and all of that.
Yeah.
Like, well, apparently not.
So if people want to actually make any improvements on gun violence, electing Democrats to all levels of government is how to do that. In terms of the environment, between 1901 and 2016, Western Colorado had some of the most significant temperature increases across the entire Southwest United States, and has also seen a 70% increase in drilling since 2017. So same. I mean, Republicans literally deny that climate change is real. So again, if you want to make strides in an environment, the key is electing Democrats, especially, ones that understand science. And I don't know. I feel like that's a low bar, but please. And then the last issue that I found specific to Colorado is affordable housing. So
that's a big one.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, providing affordable housing would just solve so many problems that it's so silly. It's so silly. Yeah. But
I'm reading a book right now. Sounds really boring, but it's actually really good the way the author writes it. It's about just taxes in America and how it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And, like affordable housing is one of the points that it's brought up. Like, if we would reform our taxes to being more
progressive,
but like equal ratios, instead of just everybody getting a blanket percentage, then affordable housing could happen as well, because then people could afford houses. Anyway, tangent. But
that doesn't sound boring to me at all, because I went to a 90-minute tax webinar on Tuesday because I just learned that Illinois has flat income tax rate. I mean, I'm going to do an entire episode about it. Morgan, if you think it's boring, you don't have to listen. I'll make Clark listen to me talk about taxes. But yeah, we have a flat income tax rate, which is the only rate that can be progressive based on like how much wealth you have. And I don't know, it's crazy. Like, that is taxing people who have more than $250,000 or make more than $250,000 a year is like how you help with inequality. Like, there's just no other way to do it. Like, where are you going to take the money from if, like, it's just a fact of how things work. So,
well, and if anybody from Colorado is listening, Fair Tax Colorado will be on the ballot in November.
Fair Tax Illinois is on the ballot in November too.
Hey! Vote yes.
Vote yes. Please, please, please.
Yes.
Please, please, please. So Colorado State Legislature actually passed 3 bills in 2019 that added $82 million a year to efforts aimed at providing more affordable housing to Coloradans, which is good. Although, I mean, that's very recent. Like, I would be surprised if any of that even exists yet. But that's because the Senate flipped in 2018. The Colorado Senate flipped. Like, I would be very surprised if any of that could have passed a Republican-controlled state legislature. So because there's a Democratic-controlled state legislature, that's $82 million a year that go towards affordable housing in Colorado now. And that will help a ton of people. And again, guess who cares about that? Democrats, not Republicans. Time and time again. People might be starting to notice a pattern. I hope they are.
I really hope they are.
Yeah. And then the dates that matter in Colorado are early voting for the general election starts October 26th and goes to November 2nd. You have to register for the general election by October 27th. That's the last day. And then for everybody, the general election is on November 3rd.
And you can expect your mail-in ballot, so you don't have to necessarily go
Yes.
to a polling place.
We love
you can
it.
If you want. It's very fun, but if you can't or are scared of COVID like me, you can use your
just want to
mail-in ballot.
take your time going through your ballot, drink some coffee, maybe do it like on your porch. I love mail-in ballots.
I do too.
Yep,
I think that they should be nationwide. That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, and maybe we'll do it.
Love it.
All right. Well, I am out of questions. Morgan, is there anything that you wanted to ask that we didn't get to?
I too am out of questions. But if there is anything else that you wanted to make sure we all knew before we hang up, and or like a cause or something that you wanted to promote, definitely we want to hear that.
I mean, my heart and soul is in education. It is my favorite thing on planet Earth. So just remember that education is the root of progress in our country. And so if you want progress, you need to make sure education is funded. So really think about your candidates and see what their stance is on funding education, because that's how we make some good change, people.
Yes.
Yay. All right. That's
Would
good
cheers
message.
to that, but I have finished my drink. So
And is it like, am I going to be shocked? Like, is it a split issue that like half the Republicans are like really gung-ho on on education? Or is it like, is it what I would expect in that like this is a thing that Democrats typically prioritize and Republicans tend to like deprioritize?
I would say that's probably right.
That's fair.
But I think that people understand the value in education, bipartisan. But I think that then the disagreement comes to funding.
Yeah, which is where like I don't know. I say this over and over again now, but like budgets are moral documents. Like if you care about it, put your money where your mouth is.
Yep, that's why that's a saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this has been very helpful and fun. So thank you, Rachel, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This has been awesome.
And actually, you joined us one night for trivia, right?
I did.
Yeah. So was it scary? Like, are we like, we're not scary, right? Like, we're fun. People should play trivia with us.
You are definitely not scary.
Awesome.
It was really fun.
Thank you.
It was a good time.
It was a good time. And I even
worth supporting.
Yes. I think the time that you played was even the one that was like extra long. Like they have since cut it down so it's not quite as long.
Oh
yeah. It was extra long and there were a lot of old people playing.
Oh my God.
Almost made it better because it was so funny.
Yes.
But yeah, it took a little while.
Yeah.
But I think there's a new...
Yeah, that was funny.
I will research to make sure, but I think that Sister District has adopted a new candidate and that they might have just announced a new trivia night for her. So I will research that and we will talk about it on the next podcast.
Yes.
Nice.
Let me know. We really enjoyed it last time, so
nice.
I think it'd be fun to do again.
All right. Well, Rachel, thank you so much for coming on today and talking to us. It was awesome.
Thank you for having me. I had so much fun, you guys.
We'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you guys so much for listening to For Your Misinformation. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast. And if you like it, give us a rating and a review. It helps us find more listeners, and the more of us there are, the better.
And make sure you're following along on Instagram and Twitter at FYMI Pod.
Shout out to Kyle Dibdahl for the intro and outro music, Hope Dye for the podcast art, and Ben Schlofelt for the audio production.
We come out with new episodes every Monday.
For Your Misinformation is part of the Demcast family of podcasts.